Hello and welcome back to Talon 101. Hwoarang's pressure game like this still looks the same, right? However, there is changes to these frames, and I'm pretty sure you're seeing it flashing on the bottom left of the screen multiple times. That is +5, that's right. This string, RFF 2.4, RFF 4 forward, and RFF DF+4 forward, basically for as long as you held any direction in right flamingo, you would get the +7, as it's still kind of left over in the code as you see it here, +7. So yeah, I don't think that's gonna remain in the game for long. So we have to focus on the new situation, which is +5. And there are big changes to reducing it by 2 frames. So let's go through the frame data of each move one by one, and then we'll get to like the +5 situation, because it's pretty important to know frames of these moves. So again, RFF 2.4 forward, this is a 10 frame jailing high string. Your opponent cannot duck this. So if I ask Elisa to crouch block after blocking this move, you can never jail it. You have to wait for the full string. That's why Elisa's able to duck after that. So that is again +5, it's I-10, and of course if it does connect against the opponent, it is a whopping +16 to 15G. So your opponent can't really interrupt you the moment this move does connect. You could lock in with an RFS DF+4 or RFS 1, or even better, a Flying Eagle. On counter hit, if the second kick connects, it's +13. I know the frame data does say it's +15, +16, which did allow for RFS 4 to be guaranteed before, and even like a launcher back in like Tekken 7. But that's gone in this game. They really said it's +13 flat. So the only options you get on counter hit on RFF 2.4 forward, RFF 4 forward, or RFF DF+4 forward is simply RFS F4 or RFS 2.3. I guess you could also get RFS 2.4 forward if you want to like do more pressure. And if you wanted to get +6 into RFF 2.1. Assuming the 1 doesn't whiff there. So you can just get an RFS 2, go +7. Yeah, that covers RFF 2.4 forward. RFF 4 is more or less the same thing. It's just that this is now 12 frames. It's 12 frame high, which has an extension. We're not really going to cover the extension here. But it does jail as well, just like RFF 2.4 forward. So if I have just like that, you'd have to wait until like the full string. But you can delay it, so it can keep the opponent on their toes. Same thing, it's also +13G, because that frame data's been pretty much normalized. And the same thing applies for RFF DF+4 forward. This is I-13. However, it on hit is a little bit different compared to RFF 4 and RFF 2.4 forward. This is +13G. So while you can essentially still lock them in with RFF DF+4, it's a little bit more of a risk because the opponent has like more options to like play around it if you do the mid kick, compared whether if you do like the high kick or the jab to a high kick. So the first thing is, I mean, right, +5, you did hear that it used to be +6 to +7. So if the opponent does decide to like throw out a jab on block, and you decide to like go for a mid because that's what your muscle memory has told you since Tekken Tag 2, Tekken 7, you'll lose. Much worse, you could actually potentially get floated if you go for Flying Eagle because you're trying to like, let's say, beat a down jab. Because that would be a solid option to beat down jabs here. If the opponent is panicking out, you lose that. So you need them to do something like a DF1, something a little bit slower, right? So 13 to 12 frames. And then that's when you can like win with a mid. That's the only time you would win. You do win if you do like maybe probably the riskier mid, which is like RFS 4. But the problem is if you do RFS 4, you have to go -13. And in some matchups, that's a heat engager, and that's risky. So the fact that your mids can't be like your layer 1 option here, make it so that your highs now become your layer 1, which now like allows the opponent to like do more things. So first of all, they can challenge you, and not only challenge, they can easily like backdash options. So like if I again do this, that's gone. And if they decide to backdash this, they're fine. They go -3. Of course, that's okay for Hwoarang, but again, for the opponent, that's great. This now does not catch anymore. This used to catch backdashes. One of my favorite things to do after forward 2 and after RFF DF+4 forward. So you're forced to really like lock them in. And see, even then, like your high is gonna whiff. So like they'll get a chance on like the second hit to like potentially counter hit you there with like a standing 4 for Elisa or a back 4. Or even just like down jab you straight up to like prevent Hwoarang from starting up. So that's just like backdashing, right? You lose a lot of those options. And like what option can you do to like keep yourself safe? I mean, you could do the homing mid, sure. They're not gonna punish you anymore at -10 at that distance, but you have to throw out a 20 frame homing move, and that is still lost on the backdash there. Again, at least that's like a really good backdash. So against like a standard backdash, you should be fine, but here, stronger backdash. So they can backdash probably pretty much all your options. I wouldn't say all, but most. And at that point, you really have to like risk pressing a button here. Or like try to like keep them in place already with RFS F4. Now, if besides backdashing, they can step a lot of options. And Hwoarang's toolkit for preventing them from stepping has decreased because mids used to track when it was +6, +7. But now since it's +5, they track a little bit less. So again, if their opponent is stepping towards the left and you did any of the 3 moves that put you in the right flamingo, your best bet is to probably do RFS F4. That will prevent them from moving straight up. Although again, this is a high, so one SSL duck or one SSR duck could get you. You can do RFF 2-4, the second hit, right? The second hit of RFF 2-4 will connect here. That doesn't leave you a little bit open, so take care on like how your opponent's like able to punish you when the move does whiff, because they could still get counter hit if like they sidestep and then they're a little bit late with their punish. If they're stepping towards the left, you have your heat engager, RFS back 3 to cover you. So that's like one of the few mids in Hwoarang's arsenal that will prevent sidestep left. And then you have your lows, which is RFS down 3 and RFS down 4. So it's great. They're not leaving you alone. Of course, just to double check, if we bring it on to like sidewalk left, RFS F4, there you go. See, they're gonna duck. You may potentially get punished. But of course, you can just like spam another RFS F4 so that they stay in place. Or like if they do any while standing move, they will get hit. You won't get hit. If you do RFF 2-4 forward, now the second hit does not hit anymore. So it's just like, okay, I gotta consider that when I'm like trying to hit them here at +5. If you do RFS back 3, it still hits. So it's great to know that one of the mids will not let you down. And then lows are probably like your stabilizers. These will still hit sidewalk left and sidestep left, so they really keep it together. The problem is, right, you'd have to go -5, or you'll go end up +8. However, it is a 20 to 21 frame move, so you minus that by 5, you're coming out roughly a 15 to 16 frames, so you can still get interrupted by like an opponent's jab, a DF1. Actually, it opens up a little bit more options they can beat you with. Now let's move to sidestep right. If the opponent does attempt to sidestep right, again, RFS F4, keeping the opponent in place. RFF 2-4. Supposedly the second hit should hit here. I was testing this against Lily earlier. There you go. So off RFF DF4 it will connect, but off RFF 4 or RFF 2-4 forward, it will not hit there. So again, double checking the lab for these very minute details. But supposedly in general, against most characters, the second hit would hit. You get another high now at sidestep right. You can do RFS 3. So you can knock them down, and if they do block it, right, you'll end up at +4 in +4, right? +4 in left flamingo, which is decent. If they are also stepping towards the right, RFS 4. This is slower. This is faster. However, again, -13 compared to RFS back 3, which is slower and only gives a heat engager. And then if you have no heat engager, you just go plus. You just get like some frame advantage, and they can still like backdash there. Classic Hwoarang moment. After that mid, of course the lows, they're supposed to be hitting here. Again, I was testing it against Lily, so I guess Elisa will avoid RFS down 3. And double check all the details in the lab. But RFS down 4, I guess does not care for the opponent's movement for the most part. But again, there's a lot of risk. As you can see, like risk is increasing. So you don't have like a really safe layer 1 to like build off of. It'd be really dope if like we could have just like Flying Eagle here, or if not Flying Eagle, like have always like RFS 1. Speaking of RFS 1, it looks like it's catching here against SSR. When I was doing it against Lily, it just straight up always lost. So let's just double check that again with sidewalk right for all options. RFS F4, there you go. RFS 2-4 forward. Second hit this time, there you go. RFS 3. RFS 4. RFS down 3, still losing here. RFS down 4. And of course, RFS 1. Just going on like all those details, your opponent can challenge you immediately, and you have to like guess whether they're challenging or not. And then if they're not going to challenge right, they can easily just like backdash your option, or like your mid option is just like gone. And then if they step, you have to like be really careful on like which mid you use. So if you use the mid that tracks towards the other way, but not the way they step, you're in trouble. So at that point, you're really forced to like go high and low. It's still, again, a very usable scenario. But it's like, there are way more openings. And this isn't counting like other ways the opponent can challenge. But again, that's a jab, right? And if we go for like a down jab, you still lose. Your mid will still lose. Your high, apparently, will keep them in place. I thought a down jab would high crush. I guess that's a bonus here in this situation. Or maybe that's specific to Alisa. Double check again the lab. Or I'll put like a note here at like this section of the video when this does get edited, if it was specifically an Alisa thing or if it affects like a good amount of characters. So RFS F4 beating a down jab, surprisingly. Then of course if you go low, so if they're doing 10 frame challenges, highs and lows will be your best friend. But then if they're doing a mid that does, of course, a high crush, then you really gotta think about like throwing out that mid option. So like you really have to like force them to look at your options, look at like the first two options instead, which is like RFS down 3 rather, RFS down 3 and RFS F4, so that you really bring it down to that. Like don't allow them to like explore other options, because the moment you allow them to like explore other options, it gets really tough for Hwoarang, because now you have to like keep track of every single other defensive option they're doing, and you have to like, oh, am I matching it with the right offensive option as a counter? So not just only 10 frame challenges. I believe this is Power Crush. Power Crushes are pretty effective now at +5 compared to when it was +6 to +7. If let's say you were going to go straight into RFS 2-4 forward, that's the most you could probably do, realistically. That's not bad. You still deal a decent amount of damage back to them, but of course you're gonna take damage. It's unavoidable. For as long as like you enter here, enter RFF or RFS 2-4 forward, there's no way of staying safe anymore. You'll stay safe against like a slower Power Crush, but against like 19 frames and below, so like Asuka F1+2, Alisa's back 1+2, you're gonna be stuck in a hard place if you like decided to like continue pressure with RFS 2-4 forward. Because if you lock in with like RFS F4, Power Crush is gone. And if you let it rip on RFS down 3-3, they're gonna lose. And if you of course like straight up grab, right? Provided the grab doesn't whiff in that scenario, so like know which sequence you should be doing it off. But if you do it from here, you can't even go for a grab. But you can go for a grab if it's like 20 frames. I'll showcase that later, or maybe I'll like have a short clip right now showing it where it wins. So yeah, if you want to remain safe and you want to like still pressure the opponent, RFF 2-1 is probably an option you should consider now on like any of the 3 moves that put you in right flamingo. Like you're pretty much guaranteed to like always remain safe while dealing like some damage to them. And of course, yeah, you're thinking, oh, maybe I can like Power Crush, right? I can like prevent them from doing a Power Crush to me. No, we lose here every single time. Doesn't matter from which sequence I pull it up. Power Crush loses. The Power Crush only wins once the opponent decides to do a heat burst. So if the opponent's just like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do my Power Crush because I may potentially like lose, or like they'll deal some damage to me, or they get to remain completely safe, right? I'm just going to Power Crush. At that point, you can easily react. For as long as like you're doing, what do you call this? RFS 2-4 forward. Because again, if you do RFS F4 denied, you do RFS down 3, it's stopped. Even the grab. So again, you have to do a Power Crush immediately right after. You can't, what do you call this, add another RFS F4, stay in right flamingo. I mean, that's still a chunk of damage you're doing back to them, and you just need to hit them once to like remove the recoverable health. But yeah, this is like a lot more doable, because again, you see like the opponent freeze, right? So the moment they freeze, you can just like, oh, okay, they're doing a heat burst, I can Power Crush. because you cannot, you straight up cannot react to it if it's like that. Or you can, right? You're gonna be like, oh, is that the heat burst? Apparently it wasn't the heat burst. Yeah, that makes it tougher, because that was like one of the sequences you could do. And if the opponent decides to do, let's say, a rage art, at that point, if you were pressuring, you lost. Like, they can straight up deny RFS 2-4 forward. The only way you deny this is by RFS F4. RFS F4 is straight up like the only option that will keep you safe here. So you may want to default to RFS F4 as well. Like the moment you do get any of the +5 situations on block, because even if you go for something like RFS down 3, which supposedly would trade, or like beat a jab and then trade with a down jab, it just straight up loses to Power Crush. You just never win. So it's something to like keep in mind. Like when the opponent does have rage, do not think immediately of doing RFS 2-4 or RFS 2-4. Do not think about doing that the moment they have rage. The moment they have rage, hit them with this. Hit them with RFS F4. That way they second guess the rage art attempt, because they'll still have life. They'll still have some HP, very little, because they get hit after the +5. So at that point, so we check the, so we're gonna check +2, right? +2. Yeah, so again, for as long as it's on hit, you can loop it. The moment it goes on block, I guess pray. Yeah, you're just gonna have to pray the moment it does go on block. Yeah. But yeah, so it does make it a little bit difficult to deal with like an opponent's option here. So if they wanna like do a challenge, you can, like, aside from like, of course, trying to go for the highs, the lows, or even like, let's say, a Power Crush, which would beat the down jab, not the high, you can implement movement. Because a jab or a down jab is like a universal defensive option that's pretty good. And you can like step them, depending if the move would be steppable in that situation. So the jab is not steppable to Hwoarang here, but I guess if I change it to a down jab, you could. Yeah, you could step it. This is towards the left, and that's a punish. Change it towards the right, also a punish. Backdash in Flamingo. Yes. Of course, this is like going straight for like the best optimal punish, but a realistic punish would be going for something like that. A flying eagle, or even just a string. Like whatever you can react with the fastest as you're like moving back in Flamingo. Just to like, you know, keep the opponent in check. And it's just out of nowhere. It's just like they didn't know what to expect here. It's just like he moved backward, he didn't move forward. Because you know, a lot of opponents are going to be very used to Hwoarang either pressing a button or moving forward in Flamingo. Or even, right? So let's turn off a challenge. Or even canceling. Because they're like, oh, I won't press on the first one. So like the Hwoarang's like, okay, I'll just do something else. So that you think like, okay, you thought I was gonna press a button. No, I'm just like slowly advancing you, maybe just by like a dot or two towards the wall, and just adds in the mental stack. Because they're like, oh, do I challenge now? And then, you know, they may potentially get hit by the string, or as Hwoarang cancels, they'll lose to like RFS F4, or if you have the read, like they were going to do a low or a high crush, and of course RFS up forward 4, RFS 3-4, RFS up forward 3, any of the mids that do low crush in Ride Flamingo. But yeah, just to recap, your best option the moment you do one of these +5s, RFS F4. Because again, you beat Power Crushes, you beat RAs, and it catches both sidestep left, sidestep right. Basically, it's pretty much pseudo homing at that point. After, and you know, at the +5 situation. RFF 2-4, if you're doing this and you're against a Power Crush, you might as well just like RFS F4 at the end of it so that you can deal some damage back to them. But of course, if it's a slower Power Crush, like 20 frames and above, then at that point, you can change the sequence into F2+3 in Right Flamingo. And then of course, lows, just as a check, if you do have the read that the opponent is going to press a button, let it rip. And then if they're not pressing a button and you know they're still going to like stand and not press a button, then at that point, RFS down 4 would be one of the best things to go for. That way you can change into a +7 situation where you can like lock them with F1+2, DF2, and then just have like more room depending on like how the opponent is reacting in that situation. And of course, if it is a heat burst, right, then you can easily react with a Power Crush to prevent any challenge from it, which will like severely hinder like your opponent's defense in this situation. Yeah. So again, that's the +5 situation here. for Hwoarang. Again, you can really like bulldog your opponent, bulldog pressure your opponent here, really make them think just by simply doing this sequence over and over again. But if your opponent's defensive options are beating your offensive options and you allow them to do like even way more backdash, sidestep, it's going to be a long day for you. So implement layer 1 as soon as you can, because again, just don't give your opponent the light of day to like do that. Like let them know that, yes, I know this situation. You should know actually this situation a lot. So it's kind of like similar to DF1-3 and a 4-3+4 forward on block. It's just that while that is like far more riskier, this one requires you to really be aware of what the opponent is doing. That way you can effectively like add mids and like stance switches, cancels, stuff like that. Again, that's been the lesson for this video. I've been Frontier, and thank you for watching.